Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Shannon Lane, Newmark, Matthew Shapiro, Obermeyer, Frank Hennessy, Premier Planning Group, Ben Drummond, D2 Integrated Solutions, and Dave Massiangelo, M Group Resources. Matthew, can you please give us a rundown on who we have on the show with us today?
Sure can, Herb. We have an exciting show coming up. We're starting off with Gary Jonas, the managing member of the Howe Group. After that, we have Devon Winter, the president of FW Winter. Following Devon, we have Steve Schoch, managing principal, Kitchen and Associates. And we're wrapping up today with Cory Donovan, the executive director of ImpactPHL.
Let's get to know our first guest, Gary Jonas, managing member of the Howe Group. Gary, what is the Howe Group? How large or small? What are you guys doing?
We're a real estate development company out of Philadelphia, and we have 125 employees.
How'd you get a job with this company?
I started the company.
Where are you from? How many brothers and sisters? And where are you in the pecking order?
I am from Philadelphia, grew up in row house, and have two sisters, one older, one younger.
Grew up in a row house, huh? How 8 to 14, what kind of stuff were you up to? What were you doing?
Playing sports in the streets and working for my father.
Shannon?
Gary, in the green room, you mentioned your two daughters. I'm curious, what have they taught you that has anything to do with you building this 120-person real estate firm?
They taught me that not everybody thinks like me, that you have to understand and try and be empathetic and understand what people's needs are. And if you could do that, you can create great things.
Frank?
Gary, you told us you grew up in a great neighborhood of Roxborough. How would you describe Roxborough and what it was like growing up there?
Roxborough is it's part of Philadelphia, and it's a super blue collar neighborhood, really tight knit, 200 kids on my street. And, it really taught us that, family and work ethic were super important.
So you talked about it with such pride. So does that have anything to do with you wanting to revitalize the area where you grew up? Because that's where the Howe Group spends a lot of its resources.
It does. I couldn't think of wanting to develop anywhere other than Philadelphia. Getting the opportunity to make Philadelphia a better place than it already is super important to me.
Let's see, Mr. Matthew Shapiro.
Yeah, Gary, you said earlier when you were a kid, you were going to work with Dad. What did Dad do?
My dad was an electrician.
And tell me a little bit about him.
My dad was a very stoic guy. I think everybody on the street was afraid of my dad, but he was a guy that, if he told you he was going to do something, he was going to do it no matter what it took.
So how young were you when you started going to work with him?
I probably started working with my dad when I was 10 or 12 and would just go pull wires with him and whatever he needed.
And what did you learn from going to work with your dad all those years that you bring with you today to the Howe Group?
Pride in what you do, and that whatever it takes to get it done, you have to do, because your word is your bond.
Tell me the little dinner thing again. What was the thing about dinner?
So when I was working with my dad, because he had bid the job, he had figured out what it was going to cost. So if it got to 5 o'clock and he would say to me, "Hey, why don't you go get dinner?" That meant we were working till 11 o'clock at night that night to get the job done.
Ben?
Gary, in the green room, you told us a little bit about your losing street basketball record. Could you expand on that?
Sure. I realized that I'm such an optimist because every day I would go play basketball with my friend, and we think my career record is 10 and 999, but I kept on showing up, and every day I thought it was going to be better and I was going to win.
Do you keep in touch with that friend today?
Yeah, that friend actually runs my company today.
And what does that tell us about you and the way that you run the company as well, that, your friend that kicked your butt in basketball helps run your company?
Hopefully it tells people that talent's the most important thing. And if you surround yourself with people that are better than you, you're probably going to get great results.
David?
Gary, some key words I'm hearing here: pride, appreciation, empathy. Tell me a little bit about your interaction with your sisters. You were stuck in the middle, and how that affects your operations every day today.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that watching my sisters, one's a year and a half older and one's a year and a half younger than me, and people were just drawn to my sisters, and they were drawn to them because my sisters really cared about them and listened to their stories. And I was growing up trying to show everybody how important I was. And I realized that by listening more and asking more questions, you get way better results.
So it's no wonder your team blew up to, it's about 120 people now, right?
Correct.
You don't build that without appreciation. That's awesome, Gary.
Thank you.
So as opposed to telling, you do a lot of listening, and that's how you've been able to build the business?
Yeah, I mean, we try and do a lot of, just asking questions and trying to understand. And, through that process, it has worked out really, really well for us. I tell people all the reasons not to do business with us. And, that turns out into being business, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. There was something you did recently for your 50th birthday where you got clearance with your wife. What was that? What was that little bike trip all about, and why'd you do it?
So we decided to ride I decided to ride my bike across the country as like a birthday present for myself or midlife crisis. And as part of that, one of my good friends, Marcus Allen, who runs Big Brothers Big Sisters in the Philadelphia region, decided that, he was going to join and we would make it a fundraiser for Big Brothers. And we raised $200,000 for Big Brothers in the process. So it was awesome.
Wait a second. So you rode across the country and you did this as a fundraiser. And why'd you do that? Why'd you have to do that? And what'd you do with the money anyway?
So look, I'm about doing epic things and showing people that anything's possible. Right. And so for me to have the ability to be out in nature for 50 days and go from San Francisco to Atlantic City and see the whole country and do it while doing something that's bigger than ourselves and raising money for Big Brothers was a no-brainer.
Doing something bigger than ourselves. But I thought the CEO of a business, especially if you started the business, you got to be all about ego and the fact that you did it, but you're talking about being part of something bigger than yourself.
I don't know how to answer that because I have a pretty big ego, but what I would say is that what you learn is that when you can do things and support other people and other organizations, that makes you feel way better than just focusing on yourself.
Are you more like your mom or your dad?
I would say that hopefully I took the best parts of both of them. My dad is the stoic. I'm more of like my mom. I'm a people person out there all the time. So got that from her. Got the do what you say you're going to do from my dad. So a little both.
Tell me a little bit more about mom.
We're pretty sure my mom is an angel sent from heaven that's never done anything wrong in her life, is what we say about her.
Why do you say that?
She was great in school. She graduated #1 in her class from nursing school. She left that to run my dad's business with him. And, she's just an always do the right thing type of person. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about my mother.
So what do you bring from your mom to work every day?
Nobody's perfect. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. And when you do, own those mistakes and people will respect you.
Which one of them does the positive energy come from?
The positive energy really comes from the idea that, I just spent 49 days with Marcus Allen, all day, every day. And, through a lot of adversity and what we always did was focus, if things went poorly, we started singing. And, it's just one of those things where that you can address a situation in two ways. Something bad happens, you can either address it and go, all right, I'm going to make this a great experience, or you can focus on the negative. We always choose to focus on the positive. And I think I just got that more from being out in the world than maybe from my parents.
Whose idea was it to start singing? Two grown men singing?
It was actually the third guy that came with us would sing Motown songs while we were, riding in the rain or having problems. And it really resonated with the three of us.
Did you feel like weird doing that kind of stuff? I mean, you got two other guys that are successful and you're singing in the rain on your bikes.
I've discovered that, I'm with two other alpha males. Marcus is a professional, former professional athlete. I've discovered that no matter who you're with or what you're doing, if you're having fun, like all that weirdness goes away.
If you're having fun, all that weirdness goes away. How's that affect your building this business of 120 people from scratch?
I think it affects it because we understand that, everybody's really the same at the end of the day, and what's important to them is the same. And so, we focus a lot on our employees and how to make their lives better. We have a program called Financial Freedom, and our goal is to make everybody create passive income.
What is the website address of this organization?
Very simple. howgroup.com, HOW group.com.
We've been speaking with Gary Jonas, who's managing member of the How Group here on Executive Leaders Radio. Back in a moment, right after this quick break. Don't go away. You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Devon Winter, president of FW Winter. Devon, what is FW Winter? What are you guys doing?
We are a metal powder manufacturer located in Camden, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. How large or how small is this company, and how'd you get a job with it?
We have a 20-person team, and my father started the company.
And where you're from originally? How many brothers and sisters? Where are you in the pecking order?
From Winmore, Pennsylvania, and I'm the youngest of two.
Mm-hmm. What kind of stuff were you up to 8 to 14 years old?
I was playing sports, really into art, went to a pretty rigorous all-girls school.
Mm-hmm. So sports, art, all-girls school. Matthew?
Yeah, you've said to us a couple times, including in the green room, about your rigorous all-girls school. Tell me a little bit about that. Are you like this natural academic?
I'm not a natural academic. I actually have a learning disability called dyslexia.
So wait a minute. So you went to this rigorous all-girls school with dyslexia. What was that like? Tell me a little bit about that.
It was tough. I mean, it was definitely something I really had to work through. And I, was oftentimes told that it was, my friends were very smart. I wasn't so smart, and I wasn't really going to get to the same level of academics or university as my peers.
How did you react to being told that you weren't going to succeed?
I think you can either go two ways. You can either really close yourself off, or you can, light a fire in yourself. And I chose to light that fire and work really hard.
Was there someone who really supported you in kind of lighting that fire and pushing forward through that fight?
Yes, my father definitely did. He sent me to school, always telling me in one ear, out the other, don't let the negativity sit in you.
And were you able to do that successfully?
I mean, I think it's definitely taken a long time, but I really tried to, go to school every day knowing I had that support at home. And it's worked out so far.
So you went to this really rigorous school where you were told you wouldn't succeed, and you needed like your father's to teach you in one ear, out the other ear. I mean, that's a fairly interesting background. I'm curious, what does all of that background have to do with running FW Winter today?
Yeah, so I'm in a very male-dominated field, and I think that from a young age, when you're told that you're not gonna succeed or you don't belong in the room, I think it's very easy then to enter any room, because you're there to take up space, that you're capable, and
Shannon?
Can you tell us about your mom and what she was like when you were growing up?
My mom is a great woman. She's a good role model. She, really knows how to ask for what she wants, and that is something that I've taken into my career.
And when you were a kid, how did you know that she really would ask for what she wants?
Yeah, I mean, I could see just as a kid, I could sense that sometimes it made it a more uncomfortable situation. But I think that honesty and that openness to be who she is was a good role model.
And what about your dad? Can you tell us a little bit about him and what he was like?
My father is originally from Germany, and he started a company in 1983. Very open, compassionate, empathetic person.
And your father being from Germany, what impact does that have on you?
I think it has a lot of impact on my work ethic. He's really taught me, what he grew up with, which he came from very minimal means. And I think that he built a global company that I feel responsible representing and growing.
David?
Devon, do me a favor. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your relationship with your brother. You're the youngest of two, correct?
I am, yes.
Okay. And what is your brother like, and how was that relationship as you were growing up?
We have a good relationship. My brother's older. He's more into the arts, and I decided to go more into the business side. Really kind, good person, walks into a room. I think he really is able to see everyone in the room and have a solid conversation with them.
Okay. But when you were younger, you were also really into art. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Does that art have anything to do with your business today, FW Winter, and some of the changes that you've implemented?
Yeah, I think that art has many different forms of interpretation. And I think that having that openness and that different perspective has given me a lot of success in my own business of being able to listen and talk to my individual employees.
Ben?
Incredible.
Devon, would you tell us a little bit about your squash career growing up?
Yeah, so squash is a very individual sport, obviously on a team, but when you're on the court, it's really up to you on what decisions you make, how you read your opponent, and it's really helped me in my leadership.
It's fascinating to me that you mentioned leadership in reference to an individual sport. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you make a mistake, you have to own it and grow from it. And I think that if you won't be a successful leader if you're not willing to learn.
And what does that have to do with how you're running the company today?
I think that I have just an openness and open door policy. I understand that I'm not perfect. And I also know that I need to surround myself with people that bring different ideas and different backgrounds, different perspectives. I think that a corporation is only as strong as a diverse palette of narratives that it has going on.
Mm-hmm. Frank?
So Devon, talk more about how babysitting influences your leadership style today with your team at FW Winter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I show up in a nurturing and empathetic way, but I know that I'm responsible for everyone and everyone's success as well. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand. As a babysitter, you're responsible for the person, but you also are responsible for their development.
Is that similar to how your dad ran a business, or do you bring your own dimension to it?
I think I bring my own dimension. I think I'm really keen on knowing that I think a leader needs to know that not everyone wants to be a leader. So therefore you have to give people a space where they can grow and which that they're comfortable in.
So when you walk into a male dominated room versus when you walk into an association of women manufacturers, do you have the same mindset?
I do. Yes. I mean, I think that I treat those situations the same. I just really believe that as any individual man or woman, you're capable of being in that space, and it's important to take up space and be in all of these spaces.
So I imagine working through dyslexia, as you downplay it, and being at an all-girls school probably contributes to your confidence in the boardroom.
I think it does, because I think that you can't really, going to an all-girls school, girls are tough. Especially women think differently than men in some ways. And I think that for me, you really can't say anything I haven't heard before. So.
Devon, you were the captain of a squash team for a pretty high-powered high school squash program. I'm curious, if we went back and watched the people who were watching you, your friends and teammates, how would they describe your personality on the court?
On the court, I think they'd say I was focused. And just, with the team, I wanted everyone to have fun, but we knew that we were there to win. So
the way you said on the court, how would they describe you off the court?
I was a goofy kid. I was fun. I'm really open to everyone, and I love getting to know people. So I really think I led with an open heart, I would say.
If we went back to your most memorable game, tell me about or match, I guess, is squash. What was the most memorable one?
Oh man, now I'm aging a little bit, but yeah, I would say one of our most memorable ones is we were at the squash championships, and unfortunately, I didn't win my last match for us to take home the number one, and it was tough. You felt like you let the team down, right? So I don't know. I think that's probably one of them where.
Devon, I'm curious. Go ahead, Matthew.
No, go on, Ben.
The relationship you described with your teammates on the squash team, is that similar to the relationship you have with your employees?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, one thing my father taught me is that it's important to see everyone. And, that's how I live my life. I think it's important to walk into a room, see everyone, everyone has worth, and yeah.
It's interesting when you were talking earlier about, everybody's there to have fun, but we're there to win. There was a very serious piece of you that came through there as well as the fun piece. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that I want everyone to succeed. And I think that I have pretty high standards and high expectations on how to do that. And I'm very honest about that. But I'm also, I want my workplace to be a place where, people feel valued, seen, and heard. And so that's, so we do fun things as a company. We go to baseball games together. We have lunches and dinners. I think that's all important.
What's the website address for this organization, FW Winter?
FWWinter.com.
Simple enough. We've been speaking with Devon Winter, president of FW Winter, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Steve Schoch, Managing Principal of Kitchen & Associates. Steve, what is Kitchen & Associates? What are you guys doing?
Kitchen & Associates is an architecture, engineering, planning, and interior design firm. We're located in Collingswood, New Jersey.
And where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters? And where are you in the pecking order?
Originally, I'm from a suburb of New York, Hackensack, New Jersey. I'm the youngest of two kids. I have an older sister.
8 to 14, what kind of stuff were you up to?
It was pretty unstructured for me. Unlike today, mine was more like Sandlot, just getting together with friends, playing sports, getting into a little bit of mischief, but it was pretty unstructured.
How about school? And you mentioned you were involved with Scouts and you were doing a lot of stuff on your own, huh?
Scouts was one thing that was fairly structured for me. It had a nice little counterpoint there. Again, my friends were there. School, I was a good student. And that's following my sister's footsteps.
Matthew?
Steve, how young were you when you were drawing?
Oh, I started drawing probably 10, 12, and that's continued all throughout.
And where were you? What made you pick up a pen or a pencil and start drawing? Tell me about that.
I think it started, we did a lot of camping when I was a kid, and we would travel around, and you had a lot of time in your hands, and just a sketchbook and a pencil was a wonderful thing.
And what was it that you enjoyed about being able to pick up a sketchbook and a pencil and capture whatever it was that you were seeing?
One of the things that I love about it is that unlike a picture, which is pretty instantaneous, you have to really focus when you're drawing. You have to look at the details, and that's something I learned pretty early on.
But the photo actually captures the reality better, doesn't it?
In some ways, but you really do get the ability to dive deeper and look more closely at details when you're drawing something.
So you think the drawing actually does better than the photo?
I'm not going to say better. I'm going to say different.
And tell me, what is it about capturing the details when you're drawing? Like, how does that connect? I assume you have clients, right? You got to serve the clients. Does being able to see the essence in the drawing and capture those details, how does that connect with serving customers at Kitchen & Associates, clients at Kitchens & Associates?
Absolutely. When you're designing buildings, there's a lot of stuff on the facade, a lot of things that you see at a glance. But whether a building really works or not, and for the long term and really meets the needs of the people that are in it, that's all about the details and making sure that you follow through.
David?
Steve, I actually want to tie in what Matthew was talking about, the difference between a picture and a drawing, and see how that ties in with something that you mentioned in the green room. You mentioned that the drawing, you're able to actually create an experience when you're drawing. And in the green room, you mentioned to us that as young as 10 years old, you were actually working with Dad in the catering business?
My father and my grandfather both were butchers, and they would cater special events. So very young, it was a family affair. I would come and I started out bussing tables and then wound up working in the kitchen and really working a lot with people. You're right, it's an experience. Part of catering is making sure that the people there get a good experience. It's not about you.
So catering is not just throwing some food on the table and making sure it tastes good.
Not at all. It's about making sure that you're well prepared, they have a good experience, and they're not noticing what you're doing.
And now in today's world, in Kitchen Associates, you bring that into your everyday with creating an actual experience, understanding that this is going to be livable space for people.
We really try to do that, both for the end users of the buildings and for our clients.
How many houses have you designed, Steve?
Over the career, I'm probably responsible for over 50,000 different homes across the country.
Steve, would you tell us more about camping and traveling around the country at different campsites?
Sure. Growing up, we were in one place, but camping is where we would get the adventurous side out. And we literally camped around the country and saw a lot of different places. When you're in a New York City suburb, you don't get to see a whole lot of rural areas and suburban areas and things like that. So you got a really sense of the diversity of the country.
And when you were in these different places, were you paying attention to the variety of the cultures and the architecture at the time, or you were just kind of staring out the window blankly?
Mom and Dad made sure that we weren't staring out the window blankly. They packed a lot in there, and the sketching really helped with that. Even though that wasn't intentional at the time, it really did burn a lot of those memories in.
So how did that diversity that you took from your childhood traveling around, how do you bring that to work with you today in what you do?
I think one of the ways that manifests is that we do work around the country today as well. And we have to first get to know a place before we come up with a design solution for a building that's really going to fit and work well in a particular context.
Mm-hmm. Frank?
So, Steve, talk about growing up in New Jersey, playing sandlot sports and Boy Scouts. What do you remember most about those experiences?
I remember them in contrast to what kids do today. Everything's got an adult today. We never had if there was an adult around you, it wasn't fun. So it was very unstructured. So
do you think that unstructured time helped you develop your creativity for architecture and planning?
I think it did. I think it also helped naturally develop some team building to make sure that we were all doing our thing.
All right. So for team building, what does it tell us about you that you've been loyal and dedicated for 35 plus years to the same family business?
That's true. I started here at K&A the day after I graduated college, and I've been here for 37 years now. Mm-hmm. I'm a stick to it. I'm a stick to it type of person.
Steve, in the green room, you mentioned that one of your teachers, Mr. Tenard, had an impact on you. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, he was a high school vocational teacher, and he's the one that really showed me that I could take that notion of drawing and my academics and parlay them together. And architecture is a place that those two could coexist.
And looking back now, what would you tell him if you saw him?
I think I'd thank him for making time because there weren't a lot of honor students in that class, quite honestly. And he worked with me differently, I think, than with some of the others. He really saw the ability for what he was teaching to do something more.
Mm-hmm. Steve, you mentioned your oldest child, Dana, is special. And I'm wondering what Dana's taught you about building this architectural firm.
Oh, my oldest daughter, Dana, is 31, and she has some profound disabilities. And what's happened is developed a specialty in supportive housing, which is creating housing opportunities in the community for those with disabilities. We're no longer a country that puts people in institutions. We need to bring people like Dana into the community.
Hmm. Well, it sounds to me like you certainly appreciate the market you're serving because Dana's helped you tune into it. I also understand that you've been in prison a whole mess of times. You want to tell us about this?
In my defense, I get out at the end of every day. But for about 15 years, I was an active, we call them missionary athletes, a player on a softball team that went into prisons as part of a Christian ministry around the country. I've been personally in over 150 prisons.
Why would you be doing this? What do you mean a Christian ministry, and why prisons and why softball?
You'd have to ask God about why prisons, why he put me in that particular one. But I can tell you that it's a wonderful counterpoint to the hectic pace of business. You literally have to shut down. You have to give up your cell phone. You have to give everything away. And now you're just focused on what you're there for the day on. And I'm there actually part of a team playing softball and ministering.
What's that have to do with the Sandlot sports stuff?
I don't know. It's certainly that camaraderie is there. But I think what it does, again, it's about meeting people where they're at.
What's the camaraderie have to do with your ability to build Kitchen and Associates, the camaraderie that I'm getting from the Sandlot sports and playing softball at the prisons? What's that camaraderie? Because you don't usually hear about the CEO and camaraderie. What's all that connection?
And Kitchen was founded by Ben and Beth Kitchen as a family business. I'm second generation leadership and try to maintain that family, that camaraderie that you're talking about here at the firm as well.
Wow. And you've been there how many years?
Since 1984. So that's 30.
And this has been your only full-time gig, really?
That this is.
But Steve, I got a quick question for you. I get a sense when you build a housing unit, you're not thinking about the next 2 or 3 years. You're thinking about the next 50 years. Am I right on that?
Absolutely. And housing is something special. It's something that everybody experiences.
Now, Tymiron, what is the website address for Kitchen and Associates?
The website is kitchenandassociates.com.
We've been speaking with Steve Schoch, Managing Principal of Kitchen and Associates. Matthew, could you please give us a rundown on who else we've had on the air today, please?
Sure, Herb. We started off with Gary Jonas of the Howe Group. Then we had Devon Winter, president of FW Winter. Just now we were talking with Steve Schoch, the managing principal of Kitchen and Associates. And we're still going to do Cory Donovan, the executive director of ImpactPHL.
Got you. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break.
Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Simply visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure.
Back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. I'd like to introduce Cory Donovan, who's the Executive Director of ImpactPHL. Cory, what is ImpactPHL?
We're a nonprofit advocacy organization here in the Philadelphia region that encourages people to align their investments with their values and to do it with a local lens.
Where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters, pecking order?
Originally from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'm the middle child. I have a brother that's 13 months older and a sister that's 13 years younger.
Mm-hmm. What was going on with you 8 to 14?
School because I had to, and sport because I wanted to. Baseball, football, basketball all day long.
Mm-hmm. And also you mentioned mom and dad got divorced when you were about 1 year old and you grew up with mom and grandmom?
Yeah, my core family was mom, gran, and my brother, non-traditional.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Frank?
So, Cory, you told us you grew up poor. That struck me. It's the first thing you said. What do you mean?
Food stamps, government cheese,
Yet you appear to have a sense of gratitude and appreciation. Did that come from a Jesuit prep school? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I got a scholarship when I was 13 years old to go to Scranton Prep. I think that legitimately changed the trajectory of my life.
How so?
Well, I was a jeans and t-shirt kid growing up in a place like Scranton. I was pretty depressed in the 70s and 80s, not much going on, but you start interacting with different people, you have higher expectations set for you. And, I went to the University of Scranton, a great Jesuit college, and, I can track everything back to that one inflection point.
And that sense of appreciation and paying it forward, does that have anything to do with why you're simultaneously supporting businesses and the needs of the community?
Yeah, I think, growing up in a place like Scranton and seeing what's around you and what's not around you, and trying to think about, how do you create a better place and how do we create opportunities for people to live their best lives and be the happiest, healthiest, best versions of themselves. Certainly, I think about that every day.
Ben?
Cory, could you tell us more about Grandma and what it was like growing up with her?
Yeah, she was in our house pretty much every day. And, I was a rambunctious, hyperactive kid. And, I can't say that I was always the easiest to manage.
During that difficulty, what did Grandma say to you?
Yeah, when I was not being the best version of myself, she'd say, "Where's my Cory?"
And what did that mean?
I think it was just a reminder to me that, there are other people that have expectations and they're watching what I'm doing and that I'm not being my best self.
And how do you bring that reminder into your career today?
Yeah, I think it's, step up, do what's necessary, do what you say you're going to do. People are counting on it.
David?
Cory, I'd like to dive in a little bit more about your sister. Your younger sister, she's 13 years younger. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, she's my half sister. I always forget to say that, but yeah, I was a primary caretaker for her because her father had 2 jobs. So,
goodness, and what you acting as the primary caretaker, what does that have to do with, or how does that interact with what you're doing today? Really, you're really selfless. You're putting others in the spotlight.
Yeah, I think it directly tracks back to, the idea that there are people counting on you and, that you have to do what you say you're going to do. And
Shannon?
Cory, at ImpactPHL, you guys are all about helping others and putting others in the spotlight. I'm curious, when did you first start setting other people up for success?
Sometimes I think about, my favorite sport is basketball, and on the basketball court, I'm a point guard. I like to set other people up and draw the defense and kick to other people. And I think that's probably true in my work life and my day-to-day life. I'd much rather be off stage right and, put other people in the spotlight.
And how does that benefit the companies that you work with on a daily basis?
Well, I think we're encouraging people to align their financial assets with their values. So I think, making the connection to help put money and investment into things that create a better society is ultimately about making those connections and helping people make those connections.
So you're working with socially conscious investors and investor groups to make socially conscious investments. So you're in the middle of the investment community. You're also in the middle of the entrepreneurial community, making those connections, introducing people to other people so that everybody can make money.
Yeah, I'd say make money, but also, do good, right? So it doesn't make any sense if you care about recidivism and social justice or racial justice that your money is in prisons, right? So unlocking that and helping people realize that their money might actually be creating the problems that they care about, and then reversing that.
Where's that coming from in your childhood?
I think it connects to the fact that, again, being a poor kid in Scranton is we have to create a culture and a society and an economy that enables everyone to, again, be the best versions of themselves. And if we're not doing that, then there are a lot of problems that result from that unintentionality.
Boy, you're a pretty deep thinker. Matthew?
Yeah, Cory, tell me about your mom.
Yeah. Being a single mom, with 2 kids under the age of 2, we didn't have much, but I always felt loved, and that's one thing that a lot of kids don't have.
And do you think that sense of, I mean, what you just identified, that sense of always feeling loved, does that have anything to do with the business, economy, and investing stuff Herb was just asking about?
Yeah, I think empathy and big picture, and when you have an abundance of love, you can be generous.
And I'm also curious. I mean, you've talked about your mom a little bit. Who was your biggest male role model? Did you have one that really sticks out?
No.
So what did that do to you, not having a male role model in those formative years?
I don't know, maybe like Gary, having a more female oriented mindset allows you to focus less on testosterone and dominance and power and focus more on, enabling and abundance.
Tell me more about that, enabling and abundance.
Well, like Gary, I tend to think that if more women were in leadership positions, we'd probably be a better world. But it really does take, if we maximize on certain things, we tend to compromise on other things, and that maximizing tends to be power and money. But that it ultimately creates weaknesses in our culture and our society.
So how do you go about living with integrity with that background?
I just try to do the right thing and make sure that I don't wind up, disappointing people or saying one thing and doing the opposite.
So I guess the good thing about your gig, being the center of the socially conscious investment community, gathering the investors, the investor funds, gathering the entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial deals. I guess the good thing is that, you're in the middle of it all. You get to go into the office at 10 in the morning. You get to leave at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. You got a pretty easy gig, don't you? You don't work a lot of hours.
Well, COVID, climate change, and Black Lives Matter really forced a lot of people to lean into this conversation in ways they didn't prior. And I think people are realizing that the way we have done things for decades, if not centuries now, is really creating more problems at a faster rate than we can fix with our, quote, give back method. So I think there's a lot of work to do on this front.
What are you talking about? Tell us more.
Well, I think I listed the example of, prisons earlier, right? Most people don't realize that their money, where it's invested, whether it's through your 401k or not, is actually, invest in a lot of things that we would collectively say, on one hand to say, these are my values, but then our money behind the scenes is actually at work against our values. If your money is working against your values at a multiple of what you give back, then we're always going to be falling behind. And I think what I do on a daily basis now is have conversations with high net worth individuals, family offices, foundations, just average Joes with a 401k to say, look at where your money is. Most people are surprised to learn that. And the call to action is just be more intentional. You can make up your mind. You can determine what you're willing to accept or not. But if we all did that, we would stop creating the problems at such a fast multiple, and we'd start working our money towards the solutions. And here in Philadelphia, we have a vibrant community of entrepreneurs and real estate developers and other businesses that need capital in order to create the positive outcomes. And we're ultimately trying to connect those values for the people that have the money with the companies, the entrepreneurs, and the real estate developers that are doing the good work. And that's when we start to create a better Philadelphia community, and I mean that regionally, and also a better society.
And you're pulling folks around you that you're trying to tune into this that are like-minded?
I'm trying to pull in everyone because I think that most of us most of the people I talk to are fully on board with this, right? So certainly we have our choir that we are serving, but I think most people are on board with this, and
what is the website address of ImpactPHL?
ImpactPHL.org.
We've been speaking with Cory Donovan, Executive Director of ImpactPHL. Matthew, could you give us a rundown on who we've had on the show?
We started off with Gary Jonas, the managing member of the Howe Group. After Gary, we had Devon Winter, who's the president of FW Winter. We followed Devon with Steve Schoch, the managing principal of Kitchen and Associates. And just now we wrapped up with Cory Donovan, the Executive Director of ImpactPHL.
I would like to thank my co-hosts, including Shannon Lane, Newmark, Matthew Shapiro, Obermeyer, Frank Hennessy, Premier Planning Group, Ben Drummond, D2 Integrated Solutions, and David Massiangelo, M Group Resources, for giving me a hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening, otherwise we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.